And we have a file to download today. Now, the one we're downloading today is the one we left off with last time. So where do we leave off? Oh, here we go. So we left off Wednesday, October 16th. And so we've got here arrays A, F19, XLSM. That's the one to download. If you followed along exactly with me last time, you can just keep that file and work with it. I haven't done anything to this since we last met. So I thought I downloaded that already. I did. So let's go ahead and open. Okay, so just to remind us where we left off, here is the problem that we are solving. We have this set of properties that we have to go to all of them. We're going to try to generate a reasonable route. Do we expect we're going to generate the best route with this algorithm? The chances of this giving us the best route is really small. But it'll be a route that's reasonable and one that we can calculate. You know, before the sun turns to a cold, dark chunk of coal. So we have so far set up the arrays. That's all we've done so far. So we have an array called hotel that is a single dimension array, which means, you know, I've got my variables organized just along one dimension. So I have only one index to refer to them, hotel 0 through 35. Same thing with route, and I think we have it initialized to -1 there. By the way, can you remember why did we say -1 instead of 0 was a good starting point? Go ahead. Yeah, we actually have a hotel number 0. And what we're saying here is that when we put a hotel's number here on the route, we're saying we've already been to that route. So if this thing is all full of zeros, every time we say, should we go to this Sheraton Hotel in Los Angeles, we'd say, no, we've already been there. When in fact, we really haven't been there yet. So by having all -1s in here, that's not any of our hotels. So we won't get a false positive when we ask, have we been to that hotel? And then we have an array that has the distances, the road distances between every hotel. Now, as we read the data off of here, we only had data in the kind of the upper right-hand half of this array. But when we wrote it out such that, let's go ahead and do the one from Las Vegas, so that both halves were filled. Just transpose that in there. So now the array itself has data going all the way across. So now we can just pick either a row or a column, and we can look across that row and we can say this one row has all of the distances between Las Vegas, which is number 7, and the rest of the properties. So that's what we have built so far. So what we've done so far is really just get it set up. We haven't started to solve it yet at all, but we're going to solve it today. Hopefully, we'll solve it today in the next hour. All right. Any questions or you know, kind of getting ready? Are you ready to move on? All right, then let's go ahead and make another sub-procedure. Maybe I'll go ahead and put it as the first one. So I'll make a sub-procedure called calc route. I don't know, maybe it's calc route, depending on where you're from, I guess. And the first thing that I want to do, because now this is going to be the one that actually produces my result, it calculates my route. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is initialize my arrays. So that's why we kind of put these in a separate sub-procedure. So when we go to calculate the route, we could just say initialize the arrays. So initialize. And now we're ready to start doing the work. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just assume we're going to start in Salt Lake City. We'll just pick a starting point. So somebody help me with the code. How are we going to say start in Salt Lake City? Well, first of all, say with a comment. Start in Salt Lake City. But how do we actually record that in our solution space, right? We got to build this. How do we record it? Remember that where we're building the route, this thing is starting off with a bunch of -1s in here. So that's the way that this array is right now. What we need to do is we need to tell it, start in Salt Lake City. Now, we can't write in Salt Lake City here because this is an integer array. So how do we say Salt Lake City? Yeah, Salt Lake City is this one right here. It's hotel number 1. And so we're going to say, put a 1 right there. So let's talk about, now remember, route is an array. And I'm saying it's an array, but we don't say what it's an array of because arrays are only arrays of one thing. And we get tired of actually saying the of what it is each time. So just say it's an array. But in your mind, you should think, it is an array of what? An array, in programming, an array is an array of, not values, not numbers. I mean, clearly not numbers because we could have strings over here. It's an array of something. It's an array of variables, right? Remember what a variable is? It's a location in memory with a name. And so this is an array of locations in memory that all have names. And what's an array? It's just what was it? I forgot. An impressive collection of, it's a collection of things. It's a bunch of things. And it is, in this case, they're variables. And so how do I refer to the first variable in the array? Every variable has a name, right? Some way to refer to that location in memory. How do I refer to it in this route array? How do I do it? I'm going to say something equals 1. That means start in Salt Lake City. But how do I refer to that first variable? It's the name of the array, route, and then in parentheses, I tell it which one I'm talking about. Which one am I talking about? Number 0. Remember that arrays start counting at 0. It turns out, let me just kind of show you this real quick. It turns out that we could come up here and we could say option base 1. If I put option base 1 here, when I declare arrays, it will start them starting at 1. Wouldn't that make our lives so much easier if arrays just start at 1? Then when I said dim this array 25, it would make 25 elements, 1 through 25. Probably would. But here's the problem. Most of the places you go to look at VBA is not option base 1. And if you have learned to work with arrays with option base 1, and you have to look at someone else's code that's option base 0, it will be a nightmare for you. But it's a little more difficult to learn option base 0, to learn 0-based arrays. But once you've learned 0-based arrays, making the switch to a 1-based array is a breeze. So we're going to learn 0-based arrays because it's more common out there, and it'll prepare you better for life. But you could make them 1-based. Okay, but we're going to be 0-based. So route sub 0 equals 1. Now, who was it that came up with our algorithm? Was it you who said, yeah? So what's the algorithm? How do we decide where we go next? So we're in Salt Lake. What do? Yeah, find the closest hotel to Salt Lake. So Salt Lake is 1. So either row or column 1. I'm just going to go ahead and put this value here so we can look at one row. And so this row then has the distance between Salt Lake and every other property. So we have to look across this row and find the smallest value. Now, as it turns out, what's the smallest value in that row? Yeah, it's 0. The distance between Salt Lake and itself. So we don't really want to find the smallest value. We want to find the smallest value that, well, if we just look for the smallest value besides 0, then we've done that for, we've solved the problem for this one. But next time, the smallest one that's not 0 might not be the right one. What's the smallest one besides 0 here from Las Vegas? Yeah, it's 268. It's back to Salt Lake. And so we'll skip. So if we take the time to say smallest one that's not 0, that helps for the first one, but it doesn't help for any other one after that. And so do we have a more general way to say the smallest one? Find the smallest one that we haven't been to. So how can we tell if we've been to it? Go ahead and put this right here. It would be in our route array. So that's probably the best way to say, find the smallest number find the smallest number here whose matching index is not in the route array. So why don't we start, we didn't get very far on this before I thought maybe it's good for us to have another function. Let's write another function. We're going to need a function called been there. So I'm just going to call it been there. Now, I better pass it something. Pass some variable to this function. So, I need to be able to know, hey, I'm at Salt Lake. I want to find the smallest, shortest distance that I haven't been to yet. So what should I pass down here? What does been there need to know to be able to give me an answer? Yeah, where am I? Right now, where am I? Because that's the place that I'm not going to consider. So function been there, why don't we call that current hotel? We'll call it current hotel index. That's the one thing I dislike is that on this font, is that the I, capital I and lowercase l look really similar to each other, but that's hotel index. I'll give this a type as an integer. Now, this is a function. Remember, function procedure and subprocedure, they're exactly the same as each other, except for what? Yeah, a function sends a value back. And because a function sends a value back, it has a type. I tell it what type is it going to send back. And I put that right here as, what type should this return? What do you think? A string, long, double, single, byte, integer, Boolean, object. Yeah, probably Boolean makes sense. We just need to know true or false. There or not. So as Boolean. All right. Oh. So now the function has access to our route array because our route array is declared here at the top of the module. So it's available to any subprocedure in this module. So we can look through that array. All we're trying to do is we just want to answer the question, have we been here? So someone talk me through in English. What am I going to do? How am I going to be able to tell? I mean, kind of give me an algorithm to answer this question. Don't tell me in VBA. Just tell me in English. What do I need to do? Go ahead. Yeah, I just need to look through every element in that range array and ask, is the number I'm asking about, is it there? So if I'm going to loop across that array, let's look at an interesting use of the for each loop. So I'll need a control variable, just like we'll use for the for loop. Let me dim one hotel as an integer. No, I think this actually has to be a variant. I'm pretty sure. Now I will say for each. We have not used for each very often. For each one hotel in route. Next. Now, we talked about for each before, and I haven't told you specifically about how we might be able to use it with an array. What did we talk about it? We said, listen, if you've got a set of objects, you have the for each loop and your control variable. Here, your control variable, one hotel, for each iteration of the loop, this variable will be pointing at a different object in this set. Well, it works the same way for an array. So I've got here a variable, an array of variables, and the first time through this loop, one hotel will be referring to the first variable in the list, then the second, then the third. And that's what I want to do. I just want to look at every single one of those. So let me just say, if one hotel is equal to the hotel number that I passed in here, then what does that mean? If I found a match, if I found equality between one of the elements in the list and the hotel I passed in, what should I do? Yeah, return true. Now, remember the way that we set the value of a function in VBA or the return value for a function is by setting the name of the function equal to something. Now, if we never hit the true, it will return false because that's the default value for Boolean. So unless we hit a match here, that should do it. Now, I'm actually thinking maybe I shouldn't have done it that way. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave that example this way, but let me write the other example, and you can tell me which one you like to see better. Let me just dim x as an integer. I'll do it down here. We can do exactly the same thing. We can say for x equals 0 to the upper boundary of my route array. And then here, I'm just going to say if, looking at my route array, sub x, if that's equal to my current hotel index, then been there is true. These two loops will do exactly the same thing. So one just uses the for each loop to go across the array. One just uses an index number to go one by one at each element in the array. Which one do you think you like better? Let's vote. How many of you say, you know what, that for each loop looks really great? How many of you saying, you know, I really like that for the for next loop because I can kind of see that index. I know exactly what's happening. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to leave them both. I mean, I can't, it wouldn't hurt to leave them both because this one would, actually, no, they would both go through. It would do the same thing. But I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. View, toolbars, edit. But either way that you would want to do it would be fine. So now, for this to work, I actually have to have my route array loaded into memory. So I'm going to come here and just put a stop in my calc route, and I'm going to run calc route. So I run right up here to the stop. Now my route array is in memory. I should be able to look at any place in route, route sub 3, and it should be -1. Route sub 0, I think I've already put the 1 into. So I got a bunch of -1s and a 1. But now that I have that in memory, I should be able to check bin there. So bin there, and I'm going to pass it a 5. What do I expect? Hotel number 5. Have I been to hotel number 5? So this should return false. For each says for without. Oh, I need my end if in here. END IF. Put it down here in the comment as well. That gives me false. I should be able to look at hotel number 1, and it should tell me true. Yeah, that's there. I should be able to look at hotel number -1. What do I think? Really isn't a hotel -1, but all the function does, it tells me if the number I pass is in the array. So this should be true or false. Is it going to find a -1 in that array? Yeah, it's going to find it in a whole bunch of places. So it's going to be true. Now, one kind of interesting thing here that will make our code just a little bit more efficient, and that is, once I hit this bin there equals true, is there any reason for me to keep looking? First of all, do I expect to see that hotel in my route twice? I might change my route afterwards. Like, I might go down to Phoenix and maybe I'd stay at the Phoenician, a high-level hotel down there. And then I'll go to some place in Phoenix and I might say, you know what, that Phoenician was great. Before we leave the Phoenix area, I'm going back. But that's not what we've asked the algorithm to do, right? We've asked the algorithm to take us to each place once. So I don't expect to see it. But what would I do? If I did see it in there twice, what would I do? Send back really true, extra true? Once it's found it, it's in the array. It doesn't really matter. And so what should we do to make it a little slightly more efficient? We're going to shave off 2 or 3 nanoseconds here in the way this runs. Exit function. Exit 4 would also work. Because if I exit the for loop, there's nothing else happening in the function, so that takes me out. But this just says, you know what? No reason to keep looking. I found it. Let me out of here. Will this make a noticeable difference in our code? Not at all. Won't be noticeable. But someday you might be doing something that takes a lot more happening, and you want to realize, oh yeah, once I've accomplished what I was looking for, quit the processing. And so it's a good use of exit there. Okay. So now we've got the kind of the framework to be able to say, all right, now we're ready to very easily ask, is it a place that I've been to? So let's come back up to our calc route. I'll stop this and we'll say, now what we got to do is we got to figure out what our next city is. And we probably could put that in a loop right here, but I think I kind of like this functional structure that we're building. Maybe I'll make another function. N-C-T-A-O-N. I'll just call it next hotel. All right. Now, what should I send down to the next hotel? So next hotel, I'm going to tell it, hey, just tell me the next hotel. This is going to be where the really work of this process happens. Just give me the next hotel. What does it need to know? Okay, so it needs to know the distances. So if I'm trying to figure out next hotel from Salt Lake City, here's a set of distances. And remember, it has access to the distance array. So it's got lots of rows to choose from. How does it, how does it know which one it needs? Why this row instead of this row? What do I have to tell it so that it knows which row I'm talking about? If I'm in Salt Lake and I want to know what the next city is, I need this set of numbers. What should I send down to it to tell it? Yeah, I probably should tell it 1. I'm at Salt Lake. The current hotel is 1. Now, I could send it down there, but where else could it look for it? Where else could this function figure out the hotel I'm talking about? Is there another way that it could figure out? Yeah. Okay, so you're saying go ahead and tell it number 1, and then we're in Salt Lake. No, let's do Las Vegas. Whoops, Las Vegas is 7. I don't know what 6 is. The Phoenix Airport Hotel. So if I'm here in the Phoenix Airport Hotel, are you saying I should send it a 6, and then it would look here to figure out where to look? So yeah, there's probably no reason for us to come out here to the sheet. Now that's going to be our first natural thought because we're used to Excel, not so used to VBA. But remember, we've got all of these 3 structures. We've got these in memory. So there's probably no reason to come out here to the sheet. In fact, the only reason I put them on the sheet here was so we could talk about the arrays in memory and kind of point at them and see what the indices are. Yep. Ah, okay. So what you're saying is that another way to figure out the current, so I could pass down the current city. Another way to figure it out was since my calc route function has access to my root array, I could just look at the root array and find out the first one that's not -1. Oh, I'm sorry, the last one that's not -1. Or I could look from the bottom and look up until I found one that wasn't -1. And that would be the current city. Either one of those is going to work just fine. Which one's easier? The first one, just tell it what city we're at because we're kind of working at that. So we'll go ahead and do that. But realize we could do this just by having the calc route go look at the route and figure out where we currently are. But I think I'm going to go ahead and pass the value down. So I'm going to put here current hotel. So next hotel is the function. Current hotel is the number I passed down, so it knows what part of the array to look at. Now it is a function, so it's going to return something. What data type should we have it return? Yeah, integer. It's just going to send back a number. Which hotel is the one that we want? So we'll have that send back an integer. All right. Let's take a little in-class exercise, 5 minutes. And what I want you to do is, I'll put the little note up here. Write a loop to display all the relevant distances. So if I pass it down to 1, I just want to see up to the immediate window. I want to see all of the distances from Salt Lake. I want to see this list. I want to see 691, 0, 653, 662. So we'll take 5 minutes on that. Scroll that up. Okay, so our task is to write a loop that will display all those distances. Let me just first start out with a simpler loop that will just display the names of the hotels. For x equals 0 to 35. Now, we can put 35 here, but you'll remember that we're building this as a dynamic array. So when we declared the arrays up here, we didn't give them a size. So no size inside the parentheses. And then when we came down here, we said, hey, let's start off by figuring out how many hotels are in the problem. and then we're going to redim to that size. So though it would work for this example to put for x equals 0 to 35, but how could I do this in a more general way so it would work even if I change the data in the problem that I'm reading the problem from? I would ask for the upper boundary of either my route or my hotel array. It's a little more complex to ask for the upper boundary of the distance array because there's 2 dimensions. I have to tell it the upper boundary of the array and then tell it which dimension I want. And since these are all the same, they're all 35 in all dimensions, or they're either one dimension, well, yeah, all dimensions. The one-dimensional arrays are 35, the two-dimensional arrays are 35 by 35. So, you know, any hotel would do. So how do I ask for the upper boundary? Do you remember? Yeah, there's a function called ubound. And then I give it the array I'm interested in. I could put hotel, I could put route, I could put distance. But if I do, then I have to tell it which dimension I want. Dimension 1 or 2. And oddly enough, the dimensions are numbered starting at 1. So even though it's a 0-based array, there are 2 dimensions, numbers 1 and 2. I'll just say distance sub 1. I'll start off by saying debug.printx. Oh, now to run this, it's a little bit different to run because I can't just run it directly because it's expecting a current hotel to be passed to it. So let me come up to my immediate window and say I'm going to run next hotel, and I'm going to pass it a 1. Doesn't matter. I'm not doing anything with the current hotel yet, but I can't call it unless I've given it the right structure. Ubound, D-I-S-T-A-N. Oh, it's dist. Thanks. D-I-S-T. X equals ubound dist. I might have told you wrong about how to access a multidimensional array's upper boundary. So let's go back to hotel. Oh, I have not initialized my array yet. So inside this, even though by the time we run this for real, it will already be initialized. Let's start this off by saying initialize the array. And then debug.printx. Let me come down to my initialize and take my debug.print statements out. Those are being a little bit confusing to me. And then I will run, ready? Next hotel again. There we go. So right now, it's only printing just the index number. I'm going to make it print the hotel next. Let's look at the numbers it printed. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 35. 0? Why print the 0 at the end? Where's the 0 coming from? Is it in the array? Does x actually go to 0? I mean, I'm not printing anything. I'm just printing x. Does it go to 0? Yeah, the function, remember the function returning an integer. And I said print the results of the integer. Now, did I tell it what to return? Did I tell next hotel what value to return? I did not. What value will it return? The default value of its type. So that 0 got printed by this statement, debug.printx. This 0 at the end actually got printed by this statement here. I'm saying print this in the immediate window. So I said print this hotel. So before it knows what hotel is, it has to go run hotel. And in the process of running hotel, it puts out a bunch of numbers. And then it said, great, it gave me back a 0. I can now print it. So that's why I print that 0 at the end. Okay, but now instead of printing x, just x, I'm going to print hotel sub x. So the first time through, x is 0. I'm going to say I've got a whole set of variables in hotel. One of them is called hotel sub 0. That's that one in Los Angeles. One's called hotel sub 1. That is, Salt Lake. So that should now print off all of the names of the hotels as well. And then now what I'd like to do is I would like to add on to it then the distances. So I'm going to think of this as rows, the 2 indices as rows and then columns. And as I mentioned last time we were together, it doesn't really matter. Those variables are not really organized into a grid in memory, right? They're just, it's actually a long contiguous sequence of numbers. But that pair of numbers tells me kind of where to jump in the sequence. So if I think about it as being rows and then columns, as long as I'm consistent and I know anything about rows and columns, that'll be just fine. As it turns out, it doesn't even really matter in this case because whether I look across a row or down a column, I have exactly the same data, right? So if I look across row number 6, it's 268425. Down number, oh, I copied 7 because I knew that was Las Vegas, but I pasted it in the wrong place. So that means I'm also missing the 404 here. But yeah, 268245, 268245, whether I went down this way or across, it's the same set of numbers. So I'm going to say row number, current hotel, column number X. If I pass down a 1, this should give me all the distances from, I'm sorry. Yeah, if I pass a 1 to current hotel, it'll say, let's look at row number 1 and show me every column, every cell on row number 1. So I'm passing it a 1, so it should show me all the distances from Salt Lake City. And yeah, this is dist. Thank you. 691.0653. 691.0653, that looks pretty good. Okay, so this is a little bit more complicated than just dealing with individual variables, because I have to think about how is this index changing as the loop goes. But now I've got this loop that is giving me the reference set of numbers. I've got all the numbers that I've got to compare. So now I just got to figure out which hotel have I. What's the smallest one? Now, if I just ask it to figure out the smallest number, it's going to give me 0. But why don't we go ahead and start off just trying to find out the smallest number, and then we'll adjust it to find out the smallest number that we haven't been to. So let's think about how to find the smallest number. We've got now, I'm going to change the order here. I don't mind having the name of the hotel, but I think this will be a lot easier if those numbers are displayed on my screen to where I can just kind of look at them a little more easily. So I've got to look across this set of numbers here and find the smallest one. Any thoughts? Any English language thoughts about how to do this? What would be an approach? Go ahead.
Using a loop to go through all of those numbers and the smaller than the next.
Okay, so the suggestion here is to look through the loop and somehow look at each value and find out, is it smaller than something? I could do something that tries to sort these. That would be a little more complex than I really need to do. You know, just to actually reorganize these until they're all in order, and then I can just pick the top one. But all I really care about is finding the smallest one. So let's do this. Let's say we're going to declare a couple of variables up here. We'll do them above where I'm doing the control loop for the variable. For the loop. Let me dim. Why don't we say I've got to figure out my shortest value that I got to compare to, the smallest value that I'm looking at. So let me dim. I'll call it small distance as an integer. D-I-S-T-A-N-C-E. Thank you. Small distance as an integer. All right. So now I just want to ask here, I want to say if the value that I'm currently looking at, right, this is the part that prints out that set of numbers. If the value I'm looking at is less than my small distance, I got a problem already I can see with this, then I'm going to do something. What is the problem? Yeah, small distance is starting off at 0. Why is it 0? Because it's a number. It's a number type variable, and they all get started off at 0. So I think what I want to do is I want to start small distance at some number that is so large that my first valid comparison is going to say, oh yeah, that's smaller. So what are some possibilities here? One possibility might be the upper boundary for integer, like 32,768. I actually like this one. Small distance equals 24,000. Why 24,000? It's circumference of the Earth. You know, if I have a distance between two hotels that's more than driving all the way around the world, something is wrong. I don't expect to find a distance between hotels that's longer than driving around the world. 24,000 is fun, but 32,000 would be great. This is kind of as large as the number would go. So now, the very first comparison I make, I'm guaranteed to find a smaller one. So what do I do when I find a smaller distance? I now have, in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to hit this number right here and go 691. Hey, that's smaller. That's smaller than the one that I've got in there right now. It's less than 24,000. And so what do I need to do? Yeah, I got to remember that one. That's my new contender. That's my new possible shortest distance. I mean, I haven't seen anything else yet, but for all I know, that's the shortest one. So I'm just going to say small distance is equal to that distance number that I just printed out. So now when I'm in, we're not there yet, but let me go ahead and send back small distance. So I'll say next hotel, I'm done this loop, is equal to small distance. Now, if I've done this right, this should return 0. Now, I need to get it not to think about 0. I'm going to take off the debug.print too. So that is returning 0. Now, wait, how do I know that it actually found the 0 instead of it just being the default value that I'm returning? Well, because even though it started off at 0, I pushed it to 24,000, and then it got pushed back down to 0. Okay, so far so good. But it's not enough for it just to be the smallest value. I want the smallest value that I haven't been to yet. So what am I going to do? Yeah, I wrote a whole function called bin there just for this purpose. Bin there, kind of like capital T on that. But now what do I use it? Where do I ask if I've been there? So I'm going to give you 3 possibilities. You tell me which one you like. I could put another if statement around this one that says I'm not even going to look at the short distance unless it's one that I haven't been to yet. So been there equals false, or not been there. Either one of those mean the same thing. Or I could put it right here on the same line, make a complex condition here, or I could say after I've found a possible small one, I could check to see, is that one, so I could put it inside. I could either put it on the same line as this, I could put it before this, or I could put it after this. What do you think? What's that? You like a complex condition. Complex condition. As it turns out, any of these 3 approaches will work just fine. But what I have to have is I have to have both conditions. I have to have this as it's smaller than the one that I've currently seen, and it has to be one that I haven't been to. And if that's the case, I'm going to do it right here. So let's just talk about the kind of the different places I could put it. If I put it up here, that means every time I'm getting ready to look at a number, I have to ask, have I been there? By the way, which one do you think is more processor intensive? Finding out if I've been there, or checking to see if the current one I'm looking at is smaller than my current best contender? But these are the 2 things I've got to do. I have to ask, is it smaller than my best contender, smaller than my current small distance, and I have to ask, have I been there? Depending on how I do them, I will always ask one and then only ask the other in the case where it's, it passes the first check. So which one do you think we should put first? It will work either way. It'll work the same either way. Which one should I favor? In the back? Yeah, the comparison, and it will be faster to do the comparison first, because if I call bin there every time, it potentially scans through that whole list every time. On average, it will scan through half of them every time. Yeah. And so that's way more processor intensive than just making comparison to slots in memory. Am I ever going to take points off of something you write for me because you chose a less efficient way? Never in this class. You make it work, great. But you know, it doesn't hurt to think that way. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it as it was suggested by the student to say, you know what, let's just put it right here. So I'm going to say if that first one is true and been there of my current hotel sends back false. Incidentally, in VBA now, I'm pretty sure that when it checks this and finds out this is false, it will not even check this one. Because for this whole thing to be true, they both have to be true. And if this one's false, nothing that this could do could make the whole thing true. I'm not positive. It didn't used to. In the 1990s, it would have run them both and then looked. But I think they've changed it so that it will only do that one. I guess we could find out. Let me just put in bin there a little comment that says we're here. So now I'll run type mismatch. Current hotel. Then there's expecting an integer. Current hotel. Oh, I didn't give this a type. So what type of variable is current hotel? Should be an integer, but what type is it declined as right now? Variant. Yeah, I didn't tell it which one at all, so it's going to pick variant. We have to have compatible types. In fact, we have to have exact match types the way we're doing it here. Oh, it actually does. So even though it's the second half here, it's calling this every time. So I think I'd prefer to put it, instead of as a complex condition, to put it as a nested if. So if been there, false, then, and if. Now it should only call that. Oh, I'm not entirely sure because been there is going to be false for most of the time. Yeah, that wasn't a very good example because I'm not quite sure we've been there. Let me go back to the way it was. Truth is, it's not really important, but let me do been there, current hotel index. And that will let us know if we see, because we know at this point we know that we've already been to hotel number 1. So let's see if it prints off hotel number 1. Of course it's printing 1 because that's the one that I'm actually pointing down there. All right, we probably have time to figure this out. But it really isn't required for solving this problem. So we may come and answer the question, does it actually call this one in a different way than doing it here? But I do want to look at this expression right here. So remember, when I do and, what I need to have for the whole thing to be true, then the expression I have here needs to be true, and the expression I have here needs to be true. They both have to be true. So been there, for this whole expression to be true, what does been there have to return? You know, for this thing to be true, what does this have to be on the left-hand side of this equal sign? It has to evaluate to false, because false equals false is a true statement. Remember when your mom told you two wrongs don't make it right? Well, apparently 2 falses make it true. False equals false is true. So there's another way to turn a false into a true. Same, if I have false and I want to make it true, I can say false equals false. That's true. How else could I do it? Yeah, not reverses something from, if it's true, it'll make it false. So I can say not been there. I like not been there better. Why? Yeah, it makes sense in English. That's why I chose been there, was so I could make use of the not. So if I found a small distance that I'm currently looking at, and not been there, current hotel, I haven't been to the current hotel, then that passes. So now my small distance equals this. And I want to return next hotel equals small distance. So it's always good kind of when you're checking to see if something works to know what you're expecting to get back from it. So I'm expecting to get back, let me just use Excel to find out what the minimum value is here. Min I want to skip that 0, so I'll just do min from there to the end. So I'll be expecting to get back a 425. I want to check to make sure it's not smaller here. That's right, and that should be, yeah, 425. That's my Las Vegas value, my Hotel 7 value. So let me run this again and see what it gives. It's still giving me 0. That's no good. Small distance. Let me debug that. After I've set it, let me see how many times I'm actually setting this. Not been there, current hotel. Oh, next hotel. Ah, that's right. The question is, are we setting the first one as Salt Lake? And the answer is, I am if I'm running calc route. Because I don't have this route 1 happening. Good, that's exactly why I was returning 0. So let's go ahead and run this from calc route. I'm gonna come here and say debug.print next hotel. And I'm gonna pass it Salt Lake City. Now I'm going to run calc route to make this happen, so I don't need to initialize here anymore. That was just kind of while I was getting started. And let's see what that prints for me. Do I still have a comment on bin there? Yeah, let me take this comment out, or this print statement out. So now it's sending back 2400. That's not quite right either.
I was kind of thinking, because it's going through and because the starting public, it returns some passes through.
I don't think it shouldn't be exiting. Let me go ahead and, oh no, I'm printing, that's right. This got printed by this, no. I don't think I ever got into here. Next hotel. For X, I'm going to go through every single one. We'll print these off again. Just make sure that we're still getting through all of those. Okay, so we are getting through all of them. So just before I do this, let me go ahead and print off X and the two values that I'm comparing. The distance between my current hotel and X and my small distance. Kind of looks like that distance is smaller. Do I have a less than? If the current hotel is less than my small distance. So that part must be true. So it must be happening with the problem with my bin there. So let me go ahead and just print this. That should be true every single time now because small distance isn't changing. So I'm also going to print out not been there. Not been there is false, which means been there is returning true every time. Oh, it's because I don't want to ask if I've been there to the current hotel. I know I've been to the current hotel. That's the problem. I know I've been to the current hotel. What hotel am I really interested in if I've been there or not? Yeah, X is saying, first look at Salt Lake City. Have you been there? I'm sorry, first look at Los Angeles. Have you been there? It's looking at Salt Lake City every time. It needs to be looking at X instead of that. Sorry for that mistake. But what a great opportunity to be able to see how debugging actually works. Debug.print is your friend. Current hotel X. Have I been there so X represents the hotel that I'm currently looking at. That's my problem. So now 425 is what I'm expecting. That's what it returned. Now, so that has returned for me my shortest distance, but that's not what I need. What do I need? I don't need to know what the shortest distance is. As the function name suggests, what do I need? Yeah, I need to know the index number where I found the shortest distance. Ugh. So I'm going through all this work to find out what the shortest distance is. Now I know it's 425. So I guess I could write another loop and look through and see which index number has 425. There's going to be a better way. Go ahead. Could I do an end XL left? So the answer is I can't do an end XL left because I'm not working with a worksheet at all. Remember, I'm working with these sets of variables that are just in memory. Even then, if I could do it, I'm not sure that would help. Yep. Ah, okay. So what you're saying is you're saying, listen, when you're looking at this X, let's look at where I printed up that small distance. Oh, here it is. It's right here. Kind of seems like I should have printed more. Oh no, that was the smallest one because my debug prints were inside my if statement. So it never found a smaller one. So yeah, so it found 425. And so the very last, it will always be the last time through this loop will be the value I'm looking for. So and X in the loop is the index number I want to return. So what you said was just every time you find a new smallest distance, remember the value of X where you found it. Okay, I got smallest distance. Let me also dim small index. Dim small index also as an integer. So you're saying when I find my small distance and set that as a new next contender, remember small index by setting it equal to the current value of X. And so now, instead of returning the smallest distance, I want to send the index of the smallest distance, which I'm calling small index. Oh, I like it. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it returned that 7. Oh, excellent. We finally got next hotel. We have found the next step. 1 down, 35 to go, or 34 to go. We spent 55 minutes doing that. How could we possibly hope to finish? Well, the answer is, once we've got the algorithm that finds that out, the rest of this is really easy. Not only are we going to finish on time, we're going to be done early. How can that possibly be? So we just found route 1, or route 0. We put that in. Now we have found the next location in the route. So I'm going to say route. Ultimately, we're going to get to a loop. But I'm going to say that equals the next hotel from 1. Well, the next one is going to be the next hotel. So the next part of my route is going to be the next hotel from 7. Let me go ahead and run that. And since we're doing a debug.print of that 7 there, you just kind of lighten up what we're printing. Not print this. But I am going to print this at the end. So it found 7 and then it found 12. So it must have put 12 into the route right here. So my next one, route sub 3, is going to be 12. Now, ultimately, we're going to get to a loop here that will do this for us. Let me go ahead and stop us at this point so we can kind of snoop around, look around in memory. I'll run this. Now it's found the next one is 19. So this, if I'm going to try to make this into a loop, this looks pretty good. 1, 2, 3. How am I going to get this? 1, 12, 17. That looks a little harder. Any thoughts? So next route sub 1 returned 7. Where did I put that 7? I've stored that 7 somewhere. Where is it? This returned 7. Yeah, put it in route 1. Well, this returned 12. Where did it put it? Route 2. This returned 19. Where did it put it? Route 3, yeah. So where I've got this 1, 7, 12, well, I can look in route 1 for the 7. I can look in route 2 for the 12. Where can I look to find the 1? Route 0. Ah, now I've got two vectors of numbers that both count by 1. Oh, this is going to be a breeze now. I can do that in my sleep. Dim x as an integer for x equals, why don't we say 1 to the upper boundary of hotel. Next. And now I only need one of these. And instead of route sub 1, it'll be route sub x. That will do that whole set that we were just building. Now to print off the route, I'm going to have to go all the way back to 0, start at 0, and just print route sub x. Since I'm printing stuff to see how that route works out, let me get rid of my print from down here. There's my route. Start in Salt Lake, go to Las Vegas, go to whatever 5 is. Trouble is, I don't think so well in terms of those numbers. How can I convert a 1 to say Salt Lake, a 7 to say Las Vegas? Is there any structure that I've already built that will help me do that? Yeah, that's what the hotel array will do for me. So I'll go ahead and print the number, and then I will print the hotel of that number. Should I print hotel X? No, hotel X would just go in order 0 through whatever. I want of the numbers that I'm showing here. So whatever route I'm seeing in the 0th position, in the 1st position, in the 2nd position, those numbers, that's what I want to send over to the hotel. And that should give me that route. Let me clear it off, get rid of my stop, and that should run. Question here. Oh, thank you very much. You're exactly right. That shouldn't be route 0 because it should be route x minus 1 because x starts at 1, x minus 1. Let's try that again. There we go. So that's given us now the route. Thank you very much. Let's just, so we're done. I guess we did finish on time, but I do want to actually look and tell me what you think about the route. We need your help with geography here. Start in Salt Lake City, then go to Las Vegas. I'm not sure where this one is, but this one's in Anaheim. That sounds pretty reasonable. I got Salt Lake, Las Vegas. I'm down to Anaheim, which is Los Angeles area. Another one in Anaheim, one in Cerritos. Anyone know where Cerritos is? Yes, Los Angeles area. Long Beach, Los Angeles area, Los Angeles Airport, Beverly Hills. I don't have any reason to think this is bad yet. Monarch Beach, I guess that's in Los Angeles. Ah, La Jolla. Where's that? That's San Diego area. So I kind of go down, go to Los Angeles, then a little further south to San Diego. Horton Plaza, that's San Diego, San Diego, San Diego, Palm Springs. Palm Springs is kind of in the desert out a little bit. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it doesn't sound so bad until I get to Bakersfield. Bakersfield. So knowing what I know about the geography, I'm going down Las Vegas, down to Los Angeles, down to San Diego, and now back up a little further, kind of Central California. What do you think? Probably would have been better to go down to San Diego first and then come up. Probably, but maybe not. Then San Jose, Silicon Valley. I'm up here in Northern California now. Bay Bridge, by the one in Montreal isn't really in Montreal. I'm not sure, but if you look at the address, it's not in Montreal. San Francisco, San Rafael, Sacramento looks great. Now I'm up to Seattle. Seattle, Santa Ana, this isn't really too bad. Scottsdale, where's Scottsdale? Arizona. The Phoenician is in Phoenix. Tempe, that's in Phoenix. Now, knowing what you know about geography, what would have been better? What's that? Okay, maybe go up to Northern California, or up to Seattle, then go all the way to the coast, and then back over to, Arizona, Las Vegas. Probably better to go to Las Vegas, Arizona, then up the coast. The big question is it a bigger difference from Salt Lake to Seattle or Salt Lake to whatever my other first leg would be, Las Vegas? Las Vegas is going to be closer to get started. So did it produce the best route? No. But it was an algorithm we could program, make good use of arrays, and it produced something for us, a reasonable route. Not the best route, but a reasonable route. All right, so a little bit dissatisfying to say you could have done better with a pencil and paper, but this was the exercise. Thanks for coming, folks. Class dismissed. Yeah, I post it every day. It's always right in the schedule. Yeah, there's a third column in the schedule that just has the video for the day and it has the file that I built for the day.